Everyone talks about how Meghan met Harry. That story gets told again and again like a polished fairy tale. But almost no one talks about what she carried with her into that relationship. And the most unsettling part is that the words didn't come from tabloids, bloggers, or angry critics. They came from someone who had been standing inside the room the entire time. Someone who watched quietly. Someone who never needed attention to hold power. Markus Anderson. To the outside world, Markus was easy to miss. Smooth. Polite. Always nearby but never loud. He blended into charity galas and private gatherings like a shadow that knew exactly where to stand. When Meghan appeared at events, Markus was often somewhere close, impeccably dressed, calm, forgettable on purpose. People assumed he was just another acquaintance, another background figure orbiting her life. But inside the rooms that mattered, Markus was never background, he was the gate. Long before palaces, royal protocols, and global headlines entered, the picture Markus controlled access to a very different world. A world where power didn't shout, it whispered. A world where mistakes didn't become scandals because someone made sure they never existed. A world where silence was not empty, but valuable. Where discretion wasn't requested, it was enforced. Markus didn't chase influence. He avoided it. And that's exactly why his words land so heavily now. People like him don't speak unless the story was never meant to leave the room in the first place. When he talked about Meghan, he didn't accuse her, he didn't attack her, he didn't dramatize. He simply described what he saw. Patterns, movements, choices, observations from someone who watched everything unfold from the inside. And what he saw wasn't a fairy tale, it was a construction. Before Meghan became a duchess, before she met a prince, before the world learned her name, she had already mastered another kingdom. Soho House. From the outside, Soho House looked harmless, stylish, exclusive. A private members club with good lighting, expensive cocktails, and a creative crowd. A place where celebrities relaxed and artists networked, but that image barely scratched the surface. To those inside, Soho House wasn't about parties, it was about protection. Phones were banned, questions were discouraged. Privacy wasn't a request, it was a rule. Powerful people came there to disappear, actors, politicians, billionaires, executives. Everyone trusted the same unspoken agreement. What happens here stays here. Reputations were managed quietly. Favors were remembered. Secrets moved through the room like currency. And at the center of that system stood Markus Anderson. He wasn't just an employee, he wasn't just a friend, he was the gatekeeper. The one who decided who entered, who stayed, and who was never invited back. He understood discretion the way other people understand language. In his world, silence wasn't passive. It worked. It protected. It erased. And Soho House rewarded people who understood that. That was the environment Meghan stepped into. And more importantly, it was the environment where she thrived. Inside Soho House, Meghan wasn't drifting through rooms hoping to be noticed. She wasn't a wide-eyed actress trying to belong. She already belonged. People inside that circle didn't describe her as charming. They described her as essential. She didn't just attend nights. She organized them. When a room needed energy, she knew how to lift it. When a night threatened to end too early, she knew who to call. When powerful people wanted comfort, privacy, or discretion, she knew exactly how to provide it without leaving fingerprints behind. She understood people, not emotionally, but strategically. She knew who wanted what, who trusted whom, who needed reassurance, and who needed distance. She knew how to make everyone comfortable enough to stop asking questions. The laughter, the drinks, the atmosphere was all managed, contained, controlled. That was her value. It wasn't beauty, it wasn't fame, it wasn't luck, it was access. Behind those velvet doors, Meghan became untouchable not because she demanded power, but because she held it quietly. She knew too much. And she never let anything slip. She knew when to smile, when to disappear, and when to step back so someone else felt powerful. Markus saw it all. He watched how she moved through rooms, how she built a network strong enough to protect her from consequences, how she played both sides of the public image and the private reality without ever letting them collide. Once Markus opened the door to Soho House, Meghan's life stopped being private. It became a performance, and that performance was only beginning. Inside Soho House, nothing was left to chance. Outsiders imagined chaos. Loud parties, reckless behavior. But that wasn't how it worked. Chaos attracts attention. And attention was the one thing this world refused to tolerate. Indulgence was managed. When a night slowed, it didn't collapse. It shifted. When people wanted more substances, more excitement, they didn't ask loudly. They didn't need to ask at all. They trusted that someone already understood. Meghan was one of those people. According to those who were there, she wasn't watching the night unfold. She was shaping it, connecting people, arranging things quietly, making sure everyone had what they wanted without drawing attention. Nothing about it was sloppy. That's what made her valuable. In a world where reputations could shatter over one loose detail, she knew how to keep everything contained. She understood timing, she understood trust, and she understood something most people never do. Power doesn't come from excess. It comes from control. By the time Prince Harry entered her life, Meghan wasn't learning how to navigate secrecy. She had mastered it. Harry arrived in Toronto quietly in 2016. No photographers, no announcements, no palace staff hovering nearby. For once in his life, he wasn't being watched, and that feeling mattered more than anyone realized. Harry had grown up inside cameras, rules, and expectations. His life had been mapped before he ever made a choice. What he wanted wasn't rebellion, it was relief. And that's exactly what Meghan offered him. Around her, Harry could breathe. Phones disappeared. Names were protected. Privacy wasn't a luxury, it was the rule. She guided him through spaces where silence didn't need to be explained. To Harry, it felt like freedom. What he didn't see was how carefully that freedom was built. Meghan knew how to create the illusion of safety. She had done it before. Actors, elites, and people who trusted her to build worlds that felt private while remaining completely controlled. Markus noticed the shift immediately. He watched Meghan move from organizer to guide. From connector to protector, Harry wasn't just her partner, he was someone she managed carefully, shielded from noise while the environment around him was quietly directed. It looked like romance. But underneath it, something else was forming. There was one night in Toronto that insiders still speak about carefully. Harry had flown in to see her. The plan was simple. A private gathering, controlled setting, a night meant to stay invisible. At first, everything followed the pattern. Low music, drinks flowing. Friends who understood the rules, then something shifted. Inside Toronto nightlife circles, there was a word for it. A run. It didn't mean driving, it meant indulgence, substances, secrets. A moment where the line blurred just enough to become dangerous. According to accounts from inside the room, Meghan wasn't just present. She was arranging, connecting, ensuring everyone had what they wanted without attention. Then came the whisper. A royal name drifted through the room, not because she was there, but because someone mentioned she was expected. Princess Eugenie. The reaction was instant. Panic doesn't shout, it moved. Fast and quiet. Because even a rumor tying a royal name to a night like that could ripple far beyond Meghan. It could embarrass the entire royal family. Something went wrong that night. No one has ever fully explained what it was. A scare? A close call? A near exposure? Some say substances were involved. Others say authorities came close. What matters is what happened next. By morning, everything was gone. No photos, no reports, no whispers outside the inner circle. It was as if the night had never happened. And that's when Markus Anderson's name began surfacing quietly behind the scenes. The man who knew how to clean a room without leaving a trace. The man who understood exactly what it cost to protect powerful people and paid it silently. From that moment on, the story shifted. Because once a secret nearly escapes, you don't take chances again. After that night, something changed. Not publicly, not dramatically, but quietly. Friends stopped hearing back. Calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped arriving. People who had once been close suddenly found themselves outside. Meghan didn't confront her past. She removed it. Old circles dissolved. Familiar faces faded. Even family connections thinned, replaced with silence and distance. To outsiders, it looked like growth. Reinvention, transformation. Markus knew better. This wasn't reinvention. It was erasure. She didn't carry her past into new spaces. She trimmed it away until nothing remained that could pull her backward. When she stepped fully into the royal world, the story she presented was polished, inspiring, careful. But cracks appeared. Small contradictions, claims that didn't align. The palace didn't argue, they edited. Biographies changed. Lines disappeared. Claims softened. Institutions don't erase myths unless they're protecting themselves. Markus stayed silent for years, but silence has weight. And when he finally spoke, he didn't destroy her. He described the blueprint. He spoke of calculation, timing, preparation. Doors studied long before they opened. Markus once said Meghan always knew where the exit was. Before she entered a room, she studied it. Before she trusted someone, she measured them. Before she stepped into a new world, she mapped her escape. And that's what makes the story unsettling. Not charm, not ambition, precision. And stories like this don't end when the lights go out, they wait. And that waiting is the most unsettling part of all, because silence doesn't mean the story is over. It means it's being held, preserved, protected by people who understand exactly what happens when certain truths surface too loudly. Markus understood that world better than anyone. He knew that exposure doesn't always come as a scandal. Sometimes it comes as exhaustion, as a slow wearing down of a carefully constructed image, when the weight of maintaining it becomes too heavy, when the edits can no longer keep up with the contradictions. When control starts slipping in places it was once absolute. What lingered with him wasn't anger. It was recognition. Recognition of a pattern he had seen before, just rarely executed so cleanly. The rise built on access. The protection built on silence. The constant readiness to move on, to cut loose, to erase anything that threatened forward momentum. It wasn't chaos. It was discipline. And discipline is dangerous because it doesn't look like trouble until it's too late. People often ask why someone like Markus would speak at all. Why now? Why risk breaking the very code he lived by? But that question assumes he was exposing secrets. He wasn't. He was describing behavior, a method, a way of moving through the world that leaves very little behind once the person has passed through it. He never said Meghan forced doors open. He said she studied them. He never said she destroyed people. He said she stopped needing them. And in his world, that distinction matters. Because people who truly hold power don't burn bridges in public. They let them disappear quietly behind them, one relationship at a time, until there's nothing left to walk back across. And that's why the story still feels unfinished, because the woman the public sees now is only one version. The polished version. The version designed to survive headlines and sympathy cycles. Markus had seen the others. The organizer, the strategist, the woman who could make a room feel safe while deciding exactly who belonged in it. And once you've lived that way, truly lived it, you don't unlearn it. The unsettling question isn't whether any single detail is true or false. It's whether the structure itself existed. Because structures don't disappear just because the setting changes. They adapt, they evolve, they find new rooms, new audiences, new rules to master. And if someone learned early on how to control silence, manage access, and erase inconvenient chapters without leaving fingerprints, then the story isn't about the past at all. It's about what's still being managed, what's still being protected. And what hasn't been allowed to surface yet, because some stories don't explode. They wait patiently in the dark, knowing that eventually control weakens. And when it does, what emerges isn't chaos, it's clarity.